Hi, and welcome to what I've just been told is episode 15 of the Lucy and Tim Show. Common sense comment about care. As always, I'm joined this evening by Lucy. Hi, Lucy.
Hello, Tim.
Are things good with you, Lucy?
They are?
Excellent. Um, I'm in my home office today, which I've already said to Lucy looks a bit messy. She said it looks fine. It looks like an office. But I'm not in the office on the end of my garden. But there we are. That's why it looks a bit different. Mind you, it makes change for Travel Lodge, doesn't it? Because I've done a few of these from Travel Lodges.
Yes.
Yes. So um, I've suggested the topic we're going to discuss today. And I would like us to talk about people's experience of care because it's one of the evidence types, one of the 6 evidence types in the CQC single assessment framework. But it just doesn't apply to CQC registered services. It applies to all services. People should have good experiences of care and support. So that's what I'd like us to discuss today, Lucy.
I think it's quite topical.
I think it's topical.
But I also think it's quite topical because you said it doesn't just relate to care. And I'm sure there'll be many people that have actually watched Panorama this week.
Very true. Very true. I haven't watched that Panorama program yet. I plan to, but I actually don't like to watch those programs when they're first on. I like to leave it a little bit, and then I like to watch it where I can think about it a bit more and analyze it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't watch it when it was on. I didn't know it was on. And then obviously I saw a lot of the comments on social media. So I watched it the day afterwards. And actually for me, it it was a conscious choice to sit down. I want to watch this.
Mhm.
Um, and that's due, as you know, I've mentioned to you before about my own personal experience of seeing my own daughter receive poor care. Um, but what there were some really key themes in it, really key themes, which I found, which for me, I was watching it from a professional knowledge perspective, not a parenting perspective. That was the hat I chose
Okay.
to wear. And it was really clear to me that the themes were around the behaviour modelled by the business owner and the values of the people that
Okay.
were employed.
And
And
that's a similar theme to the last expose, which was that Channel 4 Dispatches program about the older person's care home up in the Northeast, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Exactly the same, wasn't it? Because that business owner was recorded secret filming, wasn't he? Um, Saying disparaging things about the people they supported to his staff. So yeah, modeled the way. That's an NLP thing, isn't it? Modeled the way.
modelling.
Modeling, yeah, model the way. And it can be conscious and unconscious, can't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I haven't watched it. I thought I'd have to do a spoiler alert, and I thought you were gonna like divulge the program, but you didn't. You didn't, which was but you've made me want to watch it now.
Yeah, I think as well, I like your idea of watching it later because there was a lot of emotion
Yeah.
in the posts that were on LinkedIn. And I think for me, I watched it and I had no emotion, which sometimes I have to sit there and say to myself, is that a trauma response?
Mhm.
You know, am I numb to it? But actually watching it, I think it was because um strangely, I have this, I wouldn't say acceptance, but I have this understanding of sometimes you have to think the worst and believe the worst. And I think a lot of people um, believing that bad things happen is something that they're not prepared or they can't even allow themselves to believe because believing that is like kind of scary. Um, so for me, I found that I wasn't emotional in any way about it. I was able to look at it from a professional perspective of how I could see it related to things that I talk about. So it'll be interesting to see how you will relate to it from a training kind of compliance kind of perspective and patterns that you can see in it.
It's interesting. If you expect the worst, the reality is always better. And I think that when I visit care environments sometimes, and from personal experience of seeing the care home that my late mother-in-law was in at one time. Now, the first time I went there, I was not pleased with where she was now living and being cared for. But that decision was made by my wife's sisters, my sisters-in-law, who were quite pleased that their mum was in this care home. And I'm thinking, can they not see what I can see? And it wasn't the actual building at all. I mean, the building wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. It was the care practice was quite antiquated, quite institutionalized. So is that what people expect? I mean, sometimes when I go into care homes and the buildings are not great either, and I think, well, why is anybody happy that their loved one is here? Why is anyone commissioning this service? And I think it might be that they expect it to be much worse, and this is better than much worse, so it must be good.
It could also be that in comparison to the reality that they had before,
It's better.
It's better. So for you, you have knowledge and insight of how things, could we say, should be. I don't really like shouldisms, but if we look from
shouldism. What's a shouldism?
Shouldism.
Is that a loosely made up word?
No, it's like I should do this. Well,
I know what it is, but it's a made up word.
Yeah, well, I do have Lucyisms. Have you not heard some of my Lucyisms?
That's definitely a made up word.
It's a shouldism. It's a Lucyism.
It is.
Stop teasing me. Come on, I was on a roll then. I got a point. Now I've lost it. Right, you go in there with your I'm ignoring you, Tim. Stop it. Okay. You go in there with your knowledge and your experience. So you know the standard that can be achieved.
Yes.
And that people ideally would like to aspire to. Okay. But if that person previously had been in a really bad care home and then they want to one that was less bad, they might actually think it's good. So it all depends on our reality, doesn't it?
And in a way, it's a little bit of British culture, isn't it? We ask people how they are. They say, not too bad. It's as if it's not bad, it must be good.
I've got another one. I can't complain.
Yes.
Do you know, I said that to somebody. Somebody said that to me the other week. And I went, oh, that's interesting. Pricked my ears up, as you can imagine. And I said, give me a bit more information. You can't complain specifically. And she went, oh, there's no point complaining because no one will listen.
Oh, that's bad. It's bad, isn't it?
And I was like, okay.
So people think from a compliance perspective, the only way to evidence people's experiences is with surveys. And I say many times to providers, yes, formal feedback is important. But if all you are doing is a survey once a year where someone gives you a score or ticks a smiley face or a not smiley face, you're scratching the surface. People's experiences happen every minute of every day.
Now, it's interesting you say that because there's a social media post that's gone out today that looks to be going viral about the subject. And it commented about the fact of what if we were to record really positive, happy moments, exactly like, with the frequency that we have to record accidents and incidents.
Yeah, very true. said similar things many times. And some of the care planning software does record people's emotions, but I actually think it's a bit of a false recording.
Especially if the person themselves doesn't state, I am feeling this. If I'm just doing a mind read, I could look at you and go, you look like you're happy today, Tim. Shoot.
And you've made that deduction because I don't look unhappy.
You're smiling.
Yes.
You're giving me the things that would suggest that that is how you feel. But fundamentally, it might be that you're just smiling because you're like,
no, what you're doing now is thinking how you would feel if you were smiling.
potentially I could be projecting onto you.
You could be, yeah. So you're thinking Tim is smiling. When you smile, you feel happy. Therefore, if I'm smiling, I must feel happy.
But also, we've all been taught right from an early age that a smile means happy.
It's
Draw
like
a happy face, draw a sad face.
it's like when you look at your dog, you think your dog's laughing,
Yeah,
but your dog isn't laughing at all.
yeah. Or I say, no, you can't have a treat. And then automatically I get mum guilt thinking I've hurt him. I haven't hurt him. It's a dog.
But the dog looks sad.
It does.
There's a word for that. It's
I'm
called
projecting.
anthropomorph. I can't say it, but that's that.
Anthropomorphism.
You can't say it either, can you?
See, it's catching, Tim.
It is. And you know, there are loads of people watching and listening to this now who are just saying that word and go, what's wrong with those two? Can they not speak properly?
It's a bit like if I say to you, don't think of a red elephant.
You did that last time, and I didn't think of the red elephant that time.
I'm going to catch you out, though. Anyway, come on, right.
I
want to know
I
more
thought of a
about
red
this
letterbox.
I want to know more about this CQC thing.
Okay,
because I'm not up to speed with this because I don't do this stuff anymore.
Well, you better get up to speed with it because in October we're on live on stage and you're going to be talking about it.
Yeah, but I can talk about stuff, but I don't have to know the detail.
So, when the CQC, with their wonderful new single assessment framework, which in reality isn't quite that wonderful, but there you go, there are 6 evidence types, 5 of which apply in social care. CQC say all of the evidence types are equally important, but they also say somewhere else that people's experiences are seen as the most important evidence for good care.
Okay.
In the quality statements, of which there are 34, in the key questions for safe, responsive, effective, and caring, people's experiences applies to most of those quality statements. There are services that breach regulations because of their processes, their records, and still get rated as good because despite their regulatory breaches, people have good experiences of care. Well, that's a bit nonsensical. But in a way, it does make sense, doesn't it? Because under the old regulatory framework, you could deliver really great care that people loved, but your paperwork was a bit shit. And you got rated accordingly. Possibly even inadequate, and notice a proposal to cancel your registration. Mm-hmm. Whereas now, it's a bit more pragmatic, isn't it? Yes, your paperwork might be a bit ropey. Notice they didn't say a bit shit that time. But people have good experiences of care. They're happy. And like we just discussed, people are happy when maybe they shouldn't be happy because what they've now got, like you rightly said, is better than what they had. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think it's hard for care providers to capture evidence of people's good experiences. And the best place to get it from is to ask the people. But we don't do that, do we?
No, and it's that one of the things I make a point of not doing is mind reading. I check stuff out.
Okay.
Clarify communication. So I think what's really key here is that people need to clarify people's experiences. So maybe in the documentation, it could show that I've spoken to so and so and asked them how they felt about.
Yeah, but therein lies the problem.
They
I
don't
mean,
document it.
no, when you read most care records, and it isn't actually about the person they're caring for,
No.
it's the staff's diary.
Yes.
And when I say this to care providers, they look at me as if to say, "What are you talking about?" So go back to work and have a look. It's about what staff have done. Sometimes staff even refer to themselves in the third person as if they are somebody else. I mean, that's weird, isn't it?
Hmm.
Lucy was asleep when staff went into her bedroom. They're talking about themselves. It's mad. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think we need to record it from the perspective of the person, but also, how do they define a good experience?
So this is the thing that's interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Because we're going back to reality. Okay. Now,
Isn't that a
some
song?
people, no, it might be.
It is.
So some people, right, need to have a holiday every year or every 6 months where they get away, right? And that to them says they've had a good year. Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
For me, I haven't had a holiday since 2017 because I don't need one. I'm always on holiday where I live. I can sit in my back garden if I want to, or I can just wander across the fields if I want to. That's my reality. Their reality is different. So how can you compare the two? You can't, can you?
You
But
can't.
it's about what's specific to that person.
The saying, isn't there? Beauty is in the eye of the
Of the
beholder.
beholder.
And if we apply that to good experiences, it's relative, isn't it, to people? Like you said before, we might not think that their experience is good, but they might because it's better than what they had before.
A bit like what you had for lunch.
How do you know what I had for lunch?
Because you told me and I went, oh,
Oh, that wasn't today.
was that
That
the
was
other day?
Monday. On Monday, I had corned beef hash and bread and butter in a care home.
So you really enjoyed it.
Good old-fashioned food in a care home.
I'd have politely declined and said I was full.
Presented interestingly, tasted lovely. Today, though, I had wild garlic and cabbage soup.
I was fine until you said cabbage.
Wild garlic and cabbage soup, homemade. Now, Lucy's, for those of you who are not watching this or just listen to it, Lucy is making an interested stroke disgusting face.
Ah, but you're mind reading, aren't you? Are you
Of course I
projecting
am.
onto me, Tim?
Yeah,
Actually, what I was doing was trying to process. I'd suddenly seen a picture of wild garlic in my head alongside the cabbage, and I was trying to process how the two actually fit together. And I'm only going to know if I experience that, aren't I?
you are. So what you need is some wild garlic from your fields next door.
And some cabbage.
Follow your nose. Forget the wild garlic. Cabbage. That's easy to get, isn't it? Don't you grow vegetables?
I do.
Right. Then you just need some potato peelings,
Yeah.
bit of celery, some stock.
Oh no, no, no. You've said, why would you put celery in it? It takes more calories to eat the celery than you do from this get
Because
from the
the
celery.
celery was going bendy in the fridge and it needed to be used up. But why else would you put celery in anything?
But you see, this is a complete demonstration about how we all experience things differently. And that's where I think this is where providers need to get super, super clever in how they collect evidence.
Indeed. And it's got to be more than silly. Sorry, don't say that. It's got to be more.
Surveys.
I nearly said silly surveys then, didn't I? It's
Yes, you did.
got to be more than surveys. Because if all they're doing is surveys and relying upon them, then they're going to fall foul. Because when somebody actually sits down and talks to the people that use care and their families face to face, which is what experts by experience will do, or over the phone, people, when they're presented with an opportunity might disclose things that weren't in the survey. Because
Okay. So I've got two questions that have come to mind.
two,
Yeah. One is a educate me question, and the other
don't know.
one is a bit controversial.
Which one are we going to go for first?
Do the educational one.
Go on then.
So I would like some ideas of ways that people can evidence people's experience outside of lovely documentation.
So that's difficult, isn't it? Because we do need documentation.
We do.
The
Why do we
best
need
way,
documentation, Tim?
the best way would be how we record people's daily life. That's documentation, isn't it?
It is.
But maybe we could actually record people talking about their experience of care.
Yeah.
Maybe we could sit with people. Obviously, would you mind if we talked about your care? I'm going to record this. It's only a couple of minutes. Tell me what you like about what we do. Tell me what you think is okay. Tell me what you think we could most definitely improve. That's feedback, isn't it?
Yes.
Ask them, what do you think about what we do? Is it thumbs up? Is it thumbs down? Or is it thumbs in the middle? I love the thermometer. It's great, isn't it? I've used it loads of times as a care provider. I go into someone's and say, how are you today? Up, down, or in the middle? And I've had loads of people go,
Do you know what it's called?
what's it called?
It's a universal indicator.
Is it a universal indicator? I
It
call
is.
it the thermometer.
It is something. It is a thermometer, but it's something that's universally
Not
recognized.
a thermometer, a thermometer.
Thermometer. Yeah.
Thermometer.
A thermometer. Are you taking the mickey out of my dodgy Midlands accent now?
Have you got a dodgy Midlands accent?
Of course I have, Tim.
All right.
You
All
can't
right.
tell me that I haven't. Anyway, so a universal indicator is something like a traffic light. Everybody knows what red,
Yes.
amber, and green means.
I was in the Midlands yesterday.
Oh, that's nice. Didn't come and say hello to me.
I probably drove past where you reside in the field.
Everybody's gonna have a picture of me now in a tent camped out in a field.
Look, for those of you who don't know, Lucy lives in a field.
I don't live in a field. I live directly next door to a field.
Is it your field? Is it your field?
No, it's not. It's my neighbour's field.
Okay.
I would like it though.
You live in Worcestershire, don't you?
I do.
Yes, and the M5 goes through Worcestershire.
It does.
It did. So I traversed Worcestershire at 50 miles an hour.
Did you go up the M5?
Yeah, that's why it was 50 miles an hour.
So you're about 20 minutes from my house.
Cool. Yes, I was in the Midlands yesterday in Sutton Coldfield.
Ah, so that's the opposite side of the city to me.
Yes. And then I went to a Holiday Inn. And I had food in the Holiday Inn, and it was better than I expected.
So there you go. You're talking about your experience, aren't you?
I had a good experience and a bad experience in the Holiday Inn. The good experience was the food was better than expected. And in fact, I did say that to the waitress when they came to clear the plates away. She said, how was it? I said, much better than expected. Because I expected it to be terrible. And it was better than that. I'm not sure that was a compliment.
No, it's interesting you say that because I treated myself today and I went and had my nails done, which is something I don't do. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. And the lady said to me, you'll get a text message later with a review on it. It'd be lovely if you could leave one, please.
And did you?
Well, I haven't had the text message yet.
And are you going to put better than expected?
I'm going to say it was fabulous because it was, and I've already booked my next appointment.
My bad experience at the Holiday Inn was the fact that they insist on playing music that nobody listens to. And it's too bloody loud, and people were trying to talk and do work, and it was just invasive.
So this is where everybody will experience things differently.
Indeed.
Right, okay. So my controversial question. So you've told
I'm
me
impressed that you remembered it.
Okay. So you've told me that we can do things like reviews, we can record interviews, we can document.
Yeah.
I guess, what if we've got all of our permissions and consents in place?
Yeah.
We could do photographs of events.
Could, but do you know that's done, isn't it? But sadly, it's
I think
only
it's
used.
old.
But you know what it's used for mostly?
Well,
It's used for social media
yeah, which it
posts,
shouldn't. It really,
which is a bit, it's a
yeah.
bit sort of cheap, isn't it?
You know, I find it really cringy when I open up social media and there's just, and I think I do hope they've got their permissions in place. But so what you're saying to me is that fundamentally that's yesterday and we need to so completely upgrade things, don't we?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this is my controversial question. Okay. What do you think of, or what advice might you give if on those days when external visitors come, i.e., professionals, inspectors?
We talked about that in the last episode, didn't we?
We did.
If you're interested in that, check out episode 14.
We did. But on those circumstances, there's a behaviour that happens quite often across social care where leaders or owners or people who tend to spend little time in the home suddenly jump in the car, reroute their diary and drive 3 hours across the country because fundamentally they need to be in the building. Now, why do I say this? Because if somebody was to drive 3 hours across the country and turn up and walk into my home, I think you might find that my behaviour might change, and that might demonstrate I'm getting a different experience of living in my home if I have a stranger walk into it.
Funny you should mention that, because that came up yesterday in the workshop I was delivering for managers. And I asked them, well, do you want the cavalry to turn up when you're inspected? And 100% of them say
Let me
no.
guess. It's a no.
Oh, it's more than a no. It's a definitely not. They just get in the way. They say things they shouldn't say. And they make us nervous. And they make the professionals think we've got something to hide. So my advice to care providers is, yes, one person should attend. Just two, run the service whilst the manager's dealing with the inspectors. Just because that person's got a bit of pulling power if that manager needs information from head office and it's not forthcoming. But they should definitely not come and attempt to take over, because they just make it worse. I mean, I've got a client where the actual inspector told him to go away. So, I mean, I think we talked about that, didn't we, in the last episode?
It doesn't achieve anything, because ultimately, if we're talking about that somebody's experience of care,
Yes.
If we change the normal, natural environment that those people are experiencing the care in, i.e., how the staff interact with them or don't interact with them, that's going to alter their experience of that care.
I've got an even more controversial suggestion than yours.
Okay.
Why don't we just ask people, what is your definition of a good experience of care? What is it that you want? And when I say people, I mean the people we support, or those that act for them if they're unable to do so themselves. Their voice, effectively. What is good for you? Because ultimately, that's what we must deliver. Care plans, risk assessments, all of that is just building blocks. Give people a good care experience. And it isn't having their outcomes met at all. It isn't having their medication administered at the right time. It isn't having their lunch and having a large portion, shepherd's pie, ate all, was happy. I mean, we've talked about that a few times before, haven't we? For some people, it's conversation. Can you hear the dog barking?
No.
Can you? Okay, that's all right then.
No, it's all right, but you could probably hear the birds in the roof here, so don't worry about it.
I can't.
That's all right then.
I can hear Truffle Bear barking.
No.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I'm in the house, the dogs decided to shout at someone in the street.
That's fair enough. So the dog is having an experience related to a change in his environment.
The dog just
Time
had a
start
sex
the show.
change. The dog just had a sex change. She's a girl.
Oh, she, the
She,
dog, he, it.
she.
She. I've never met Truffle Bear.
They're all she's.
All she's.
They're all she's.
Okay.
They're all she dogs.
Okay.
Okay.
So the dog.
The dog. Right. They are girls. And she isn't having a change of experience. She's just being noisy because it's part of her identity.
And the thing is, there I am projecting onto a dog a human
Right.
experience, and she's just a dog.
Do you think dogs project dog experiences onto humans?
No,
Don't you think so? Don't you
no,
think your dog looks at you and thinks she must need to go out for a wee now? I
no,
better scratch at the door.
no,
No, you
no,
don't think so?
definitely not. No,
Did you think your dog regards you as a pet?
no,
No?
no,
Do you
no,
think your dog regards you as their carer?
no.
Do you feed it?
Sometimes,
You pick its poo up?
sometimes. No, my dog just thinks I think if anything, my dog probably looks at me like I'm the maternal figure.
I just think it thinks that you're its like handmaiden to look after its every need.
No, I think the cats would look at me and think I'm their peasant,
Yeah,
but that's cats.
yeah. So do you think that our dogs have a good experience of the care and support we provide?
My dog has a fabulous
How
experience.
do you know?
Well, he hasn't done a runner yet.
We can't because you keep the gate shut.
Um, because he comes to me
Oh, hang on
and
a sec. Let me explore that, right? So are we saying now that all of those people living in care homes that haven't done a runner must be having a good experience of care? Just because they don't attempt to escape, they must be having a good experience of care.
no, because one doesn't necessarily equal the other. I was talking about the dog, and I was thinking about the fact that my dog shows me he has a good experience because I sit down on the sofa, and the next thing you know, he's like, "Mama, what a cuddle," and he's sitting on my lap right next to me.
How do you know that's what it is? Dog might be cold. Dog
I
might be
know my dog. I
uncomfortable.
speak dog.
You speak dog.
I speak dog.
Okay, right.
I'm on very tuned into Mr. Wolf. I am. But you do make a really good point. How do we know? A lot of people do not have the ability to just say, I don't want to be here anymore. You're not very nice today, and I'm leaving.
But also, when people are in receipt of care, there's a power differential, isn't there?
Very much
And
so.
we do not like to speak up. We become subservient, don't we? When we are users of health, social care, official services, we become, or I mean, it's happened to me today. I've been to a hospital appointment today. I have done what I have been told to do.
You followed the rules.
I followed the rules because if I didn't follow the rules, then as it clearly says on the big notice, if you are not nice to our staff, we will throw you out and we will not do what you come here for us to do to you.
Mhm. And it's really interesting that you say that because going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the program, I think you might find that that is something that's clearly demonstrated in the Panorama program.
But if we extrapolate what we said, did those poor people have a good experience of care because they didn't attempt to run away? Absolutely not. They were unable to run away for a multitude of reasons, not just the fact that there was a physical barrier, but there's an emotional barrier as well.
Yeah.
It's a mental barrier. And I think care can imprison people in their heads as well as it can imprison people with physical barriers.
Massively so, massively so.
And we're getting a bit deeply philosophical and we're supposed to be light-hearted. But it's an important topic, isn't it?
It's really important. And I think this is where people where providers need to be very, I want to say clever in how they think about evidencing stuff, because so much of what we do, documentation,
Yeah.
care plan writing, it's so out of date.
So an example of a good experience, right? We talked about my corned beef hash in the care home on Monday, right?
Yeah.
How did they know I had a good experience of it? There was one way that doesn't involve words.
Did you eat the whole bowl?
Yes. There you go. Did I have a good experience? Yes.
I'm
Because I
not
ate.
so sure.
If I did not like it, I would not have eaten it. I have rejected food in care homes on many occasions.
Okay, so I have an interesting concept to put to this.
Go on then.
If I had my dad sat here, who is 80 on Sunday, bless him, I would mention a stewed apple to him.
Okay.
And you would be able to do a fabulous interpretation of my dad's facial expression, because he would not look comfortable at all.
Do you not like stewed apple?
As a little boy, so
Yeah.
that his mum could continue to earn money. So his dad died when he was 3. And so his mom could be a nurse and go out and earn money. Him and his brother had to spend a lot of their childhood in an orphanage. And he had to eat a stewed apple. And he was not allowed to get down from this table until he had eaten this whole stewed apple. And he was sat at this table. Think about Harry Potter, if you've seen the film, and the great big dining room, the big school hall with those really long breaks. So he was left on his own whilst all the other kids were doing their things in this horrible, cold room with this really long brown wooden table, and he wasn't allowed to leave until he'd eaten the stewed apple. And he had to eat the stewed apple, and he hated every minute of it. And to this day, here he is, 80 on Sunday, you cannot put a stewed apple in front of my dad. He's the sort of man that, because of that experience, he will eat everything that's on his plate, because he wouldn't dare have the reprisal and go through that experience again.
Do you have apple trees in your field?
I do. He's absolutely fine if I make him apple crumble or an apple pie or chop up the apples. I would not ever give my dad a whole apple.
So that's okay, provided
But he'd probably pick it up and throw it at me these days. But can you see my point? Just because you ate all of your corned beef hash, it doesn't mean you enjoyed it.
Very true. Very true. Very true. Good point. I have a
but hang on a minute. We can qualify this, and I think this is what's really key. So one of the ways of qualifying it is to turn around, is for you to say, if I enjoy my food, I will eat everything that you give me.
I do. Very true indeed. Yeah. Didn't particularly enjoy the bread and butter that came with it.
Okay.
Or maybe I should rephrase it as butter and bread. And I don't think it was butter either.
So how might somebody have known that you didn't like the butter?
And that was really obvious. It was not consumed. There was more spread than bread.
Okay, so this is interesting, isn't it? You've just said that was really obvious because you didn't eat the bread.
In my mind.
Okay, in your mind. I could assume, right, I don't like that word. And we know why I don't like that word. Because if we break it down, it says it.
Yeah.
So, your bread and butter, Tim.
Indeed.
How might I further clarify whether you were happy or less happy with that bread and butter?
Speak to me.
Yeah, communication.
Communication.
I think the thing is that I can assume that you're giving me back the bread and butter might be that you don't want it.
Very true.
If you were to give me bread and butter and I gave it you back, it might be because I can't eat it because it's
Very true.
not gluten free. It might be that I just don't want it because I'm full.
It might be that I rejected it because I'm on a diet.
It could be. So I think the thing that is really key here, and I think this actually fits with the whole theme of what you're talking about, experiences, check it out.
Yeah.
Check out the meaning of what people are saying. Check out that you are not mind reading, that you're not putting your feelings and thoughts onto somebody else. Get the evidence of how that person is feeling, thinking, what their experience is, whether that's good or bad. Because you know what? What if, what if, now this is a radical one, what if people were to just take feedback as feedback and not a sign of failure?
Or people are not capable of doing that because feedback's always taken with emotion.
But you can absolutely get to the point of doing that if you want to. But my point here is if somebody turns around and says, I didn't like the bread and butter because the butter wasn't really butter, it was more like fake margarine and there was too much of it. It
Mhm.
might be that they can then change the fake margarine and get butter.
It had been plastered. There was more spread on that bread than's going on my garage ceiling.
You
How about,
you had to get your garage in there, didn't you?
I did.
You did.
How about when we write care plans with people, as well as needs and outcomes and actions for staff, why don't we have a section? How do we know the person's had a good experience of this aspect of care? That's a challenge for the care sector, isn't it, Lucy?
So yeah, I mean that's a massive challenge. You know, I have another challenge for the care sector.
Go on then. Let's give them two challenges.
This is enormous.
Bigger than the last one.
This is enormous. What can we use instead of things like the words care plan?
Uh, we use a different word in Wales.
What do they use in Wales?
Personal plan. So in Wales, the people that
Have a
receive
plan in your
carers.
life, Tim, of how people have to be around you?
Say that again.
Do you have does your wife have a plan that she reads to know where you're at and things you like?
Um, but she knows where I am. That's quite easy. That's called Google Calendar and Find My Phone. And she will occasionally ring me and say, well, I know where you are because it says you're on the M5 and you're moving. So, so she knows where I am. She knows where I've been or where I should be. She can also track me by where I spend money on my business credit card. I can see you've been to Spa in the services on the M5.
Okay, my question wasn't about how the wife keeps tabs on you,
Yes,
Tim.
it was.
It wasn't. It was around the fact of the language to do with care plan. The fact that for me, it just feels if we're talking about,
What would you call it then?
I don't know. This is the question. This is the challenge.
You can't say it's no good if you don't suggest something better.
I didn't say it was no good.
You implied that.
No, you thought that's what I was saying.
You did imply that, tell the truth.
I think it's a word that, for me, just feels a bit less personable, possibly.
Profile?
Possibly. But even then, that still feels too official.
I don't think we're ever going to call it anything other than care plan.
Yeah, but my point is that that's I think a lot of what we need to do, we need to think differently about and we need to upgrade So if we're looking at how we evidence people's experiences.
Here's a suggestion. Why don't we do a future episode with some guests and we just totally focus on what should care plans be actually called for the 21st century? Why don't we do an episode on that and we'll get some of the great and the good of the care sector to be
I think that's really cool because Roper, Logan and Tierney's activities of daily living is 48 years old.
And it belongs in the Museum of Care.
Yeah, along with a lot of other outdated
I
things.
said it yesterday, right? Resident of the Day belongs in the museum. Along with drag lifts and toileting people.
Right, I'm on this. I'm all over this now. You've said this. So I've got some names popping into my head that might be really exciting to get on a room. And actually, let's just,
Let's do it. Let's do an episode. Let's have a few guests, right?
Yeah.
Right. So we need to wrap this up because we've had a few technical hiccups with this.
Poor Tim's had to put up with me for over an hour and 10 minutes.
But also, we've had a few freezes, and when it freezes, we end up doing this. A weird expressions, which is quite amusing.
Yeah, well, that's just kind of how you roll at the time, isn't it, Tim?
We've covered people's experiences. We've done it in a slightly different way than people would have expected. This was episode 15 of the Lucy and Tim show. We're 15. In 3 episodes, we'll be an adult. We won't be adults, though, will we?
I'm not growing up.
No. Just another plug. 10th of October, NEC, Birmingham. Lucy and I will be on stage in the Wellbeing Theatre at 2 o'clock, something like that, 2 o'clock. We're going to be talking about the CQC single assessment framework, but from a workforce wellbeing and enabling perspective. We would love to see you there. And it'll be a live episode.
And as always, we're not going to talk exactly how you think we will. We will say things to make you think and to challenge you.
Indeed. And if you think you're going to wander around that care show and wander past us and just ignore us, think again. Because we're quite good at drumming up a crowd, aren't we?
We can be.
We can be quite good at drumming up a crowd. So, as always, we beg you for likes and subscribes and shares. We would like to get our listenership into triple figures. Now, I nearly said double figures, but I know you told me it's about 50 people now.
Well, that's about how many people watch, but it would be nice if we could get it up a bit. But you know what? I'm not bothered because there's 50 people that like watching our content that are starting to think differently and starting to see things differently. And actually, that will be massively impacting people's experience of care. Did you see how I did that then?
You did. It's a good link. It's about time we said goodnight.
It is. Good night.
Good night. Stop the recording.